Hey there, Amber here. Today is another of my older characters. Not entirely sure how long I've had him, but it has been years. Over a decade, easily. His name is Ashley Firane. He is the son of Rowena, who I will link below and in the card if I remember, and the love of Ashley Ancre. Again, I'll be sure to link her. I'm not going to cover everything here, I think. There is a lot. And a good amount of it, most likely, isn't going to be good for YouTube. If I'm being completely honest, YouTube might come down on me for it. So I won't mention a lot of it or go into detail. So I suppose the best place to start is his birth and his life. I know that Rowena doesn't have a voiceover to hers, so I haven't really given any of this lore yet vocally. Firanes are, first and foremost, extremely strong fire mages. Early on, they were easily known as one of the strongest family lines in regards to mana. They are extremely prominent fire mages, but that may be because of fear. No one really knows anymore, to be perfectly honest. The fear is not unwarranted, though. Firane mana is cursed. There was a Firane in the past, generations, centuries, possibly even millennia ago. Nobody knows. But they were extremely not good. They did the unthinkable, as it was something that, at the time, didn't even seem like it was possible. They stole the life, the mana, of a phoenix. That phoenix, of course, died, but it was permanent as a result. And the Mage Council did not take kindly to that. They, as in the council, worked with the other phoenixes around to come to an agreement. The punishment was a curse placed upon the family line. They destroyed a pure and innocent creature, destroyed the soul of the environment. However, it didn't go quite according to plan. Instead of causing damage to the mana line, it changed the mana. The Firane mana now was fire, yes, but also tainted, which in this world is basically dark. It had a dark element to it, a dark element that manifested as the ability to create a rune. That rune is the problem. That rune is the reason for the fear. The fear, hatred, and paranoia regarding the Firane mana. The rune that they can create can rip a soul from the mortal shell. When that happens, the soul manifests into a chain link, automatically adding itself to another link that the Firane already created. It can be used in a defensive manner, stopping someone in their tracks, but not sealing them, just as one example. However, the rune is a very slippery slope. If a Firane creates it, it is extremely difficult for them to not call it back. What? I'm sorry, apparently I wrote this like a 2-year-old, because I wrote it bad. If a Firane creates it, it is extremely difficult for them to call it back before the damage is done. Ash and his brother Lindsay were meant to be killed within the first week of life. Due to the rune curse and the mana corruption that comes as a result, it quickly became apparent that boys were far more likely to succumb to the pull of the rune. Rowena was young, though, when she was... Oh. I can't read my own writing. Rowena was young when she was married, and then she gave birth to her twin boys. She did not agree with the male death, so she decided that if she had sons, she would let them live. If there would be an issue, she would deal with it. She would deal with it then. No preemptive killing here. At least that was the intent. Rowena was a strong believer in nurture over nature, so she wanted to give her sons a chance. Not that she really had a choice in the matter. By the time that they were 1 week old, her husband, Alexander, accused both Rowena and her sister Raquel of being witches and put them to death. While that was going on, he had also set up for Vanessa Ancre to come and collect his freaky, witchy sons. Meaning that Rowena went off the deep end in pure defense. The pure, unadulterated anger caused the rune to really grab hold of her. Now, Ash and Lindsay were quote-unquote raised, and I do use that term very loosely, by Vanessa, and it was not good at all. If anything, it was years of abuse and torture. Nothing else. The lies and such was enough that, along with the physical and mana abuse, I can't. Oh, okay. Apparently I wrote corrupted here, but it does not look it. Anyway, he hated his mother, the lies and such. Yeah, see, okay, first off, I'm doing this at 5 in the morning, so please excuse any fuck-ups in this. Alright, where was I? The lies and such were enough that, along with the physical and mana abuse, it corrupted him. He hated his mother, his family, and for a while, both he and Lindsay thought that the other would end up causing problems. That didn't last too long, though. But Ash never lost the hatred, the shame of being a Firain. Eventually, thanks to Ashley's help, and again, I will make sure everybody is linked. At least I think I will. We'll see. Thanks to Ashley's help, Ash was successful in escaping Vanessa's grasp. Sadly, he was alone and on the run. He had nowhere to turn and no ideas as to where to go. So he used his mana to just vanish. Vanish and just appear somewhere random that was not there. Not where that cursed elf could find him. He appeared somewhere in Europe, which he wasn't surprised about, as that's where he'd been before. It was somewhere that he couldn't feel any mana, though. That was the main thing. That elf that had been controlling him before wasn't there. He could tell because of the lack of mana, and he hoped she would not find him there. He was happy to be there, alone, for however long it was. He tried to hunt and feed, but he was not very used to the fauna there. As a result, he ended up beaten, battered, and bleeding as he fled. There was no way for him to tell how far or how long it had been. Before he felt his body give out, he was ready to give into the dark that had been hovering around the edges of his vision for a while. Even his desire to save his brother from that elf wasn't enough. Ash was done. Ash was done. His body was broken 6 ways from Sunday, and he just couldn't continue. So, he found a clearing that seemed nicer and just gave into the sweet embrace of unconsciousness, not expecting to wake. But he did wake. He woke in a room that he didn't know or recognize. Panic set in, as he didn't know if the elf had found him again or not. And I won't go into details, but in the end, he found out that he was in Ireland and had been brought home by a blonde girl named Nev. However, Ash kept messing it up. So, by that I mean her name. So she agreed he could use her middle name instead, Cassandra. That was something that he totally could not screw up. Or at least she hoped he couldn't. Sure enough, Cass was a name he could say, and over time, it got to the point that it was only her father and a couple of the hunters at the guild that called her by her first name. It just became natural for her to introduce herself as Cassandra, and Ash was completely aware of that. It used to bother him at first, but that didn't last for too terribly long. It also did not take long for him at all to learn a few things about where he was and who he was with. The man, Cassandra's father, whose name is still not entirely figured out, was not a nice man. He was often intoxicated to the point of reaching blackout levels and very, very angry. He often took his anger out on his daughter, a girl that seemed to have been forced to mature and grow up far too quickly. Ash, of course, was not interested in that, and he did whatever he could to help her. He had to nurse her back to health after particularly bad beatings more than once. It was thanks to this that he learned a lot, actually. He learned how to handle and treat broken bones. He learned how to stitch wounds closed as well. And it was something that he would use forever in his life, even if he hated when it is needed. Anyway, Ash and Cass's father ended up with the pair of them being on rocky ground, but he decided to, surprisingly enough, leave the guild to Ash. The fireman did not want the guild, but accepted and signed his mana to it. He had ideas, plans. He and Cass had spoken a lot, and Ash knew very well that Cass honestly did want to take charge of the guild as soon as she could. Her father, however, refused to acknowledge that, solely because of the fact that Cass was a female. She, of course, hated that, but at the time was okay with it. That was, after all, how the world was. Ash, meanwhile, headed out. Ash, meanwhile, hated it. He hated that with a passion, which is precisely why he agreed to take the guild in the future. He would take it, own it for a few days, and then just give it to Cassandra. Not that he'd tell her father that, of course. When the old man did die, thanks to him being drunk on a hunt, Ashley did exactly what he'd intended. However, while he had fear and maybe some respect from the hunters at the guild, he quickly learned that Cass did not. Word spread like wildfire, and it resulted in there being more riots and other distasteful things that I am not going to get into in this video. They were all happening to Cassandra. The control that Cass had over the people was most certainly going to cause problems in the future because it wasn't there. So they made an agreement. It was time to start from scratch, and that's exactly what happened. Most hunters left or were booted, the few remaining being ones that hated the man anyway. One in particular was a vampire who went by Sydney. I'll link to her as well, don't worry. She hung around and helped the pair of them build the guild back up to its level that it had been at before, one worthy of respect. Ash did everything he could to help out too, even going so far as to take care of any problems that might arise, even those that Cass was not aware of. He worked from the shadows and always made it a point to do whatever was needed. Years later, he's still doing it. Even while he was seeking out any sort of information pertaining to his brother or dealing with the regular power boost from his brother's deaths at the hands of those working for OCART. He kept looking. He kept trying to help Cassandra. At some point in time, he met his cousin, Demetra, although she usually just went by Demi. And through her, he met his aunt Raquel. I'm not going to go really deeply into them due to how this is likely long enough already. Yeah, I'm sitting at 14 and a half minutes. I got to do some editing, so probably 13 minutes. Anyway, one thing I will touch on though is his and his aunt's mana. Both are extremely strong. However, Raquel can handle it much better, as hers is natural. Ash's, his mana is more a gift, or rather multiple gifts, while his brother was dying. And yes, Ash can handle his mana, but there was absolutely no guarantee about later. So he might be able to defend himself in the short term, but the long term, who knows what kind of effect that would have. Hold on. So, Raquel, approached him with the idea of a mana seal. It would be something that he could break out of at will if he needed full access to his mana, but it would also help it not overwhelm him otherwise. And Ash is not book smart, he's street smart, so of course he would agree to that. Rocky gave him a seal, and it was aligned sun on his shoulder, and the plumes off of it, or around it, would be the deployment locks. The different locks, rather. They would keep adding more locks as time passed, and he acquired more mana from his brother as well. Eventually, he would possibly run the risk of being driven mad with the power he could wield, even with the locks in place. Anyway, I think that's good enough. Feel free to leave comments or questions. I'll respond or answer to them later. The questions, more characters will come later. Feel free to watch, sub, whatever. And with that, I'll say thank you for stopping by. Stay cool, cats. And this is Amber out. See ya.